It all happened so fast. One moment, the Arctic sun painted the ice in orange and purple. The next, a wall of white raced toward me across the water. I was weaving between massive ice floes in my kayak. The wind hit, a physical punch, screaming like a banshee. The temperature plummeted. Moisture on my face turned to ice. The sea transformed, waves crashing over my kayak. Ice building up. My world shrank to a few feet. Total whiteout. Blind, I paddled toward the nearest shape. A massive ice floe. Getting onto it was dangerous, but staying in the water meant certain death. With a desperate push, I reached the floe and anchored myself. The kayak was ripped away by a wave, vanishing into the chaos. Alone on the ice, survival was now my only mission. Relief at escaping the water vanished instantly. The wind was relentless, the cold biting through my soaked gear. I had to move or freeze solid. The floe was flat, exposed, no shelter except a small ridge of ice near the center. I crawled to it, huddling on the leeward side. The wind's roar lessened, but the cold was brutal. My survival pack was still with me, a small victory. I pulled out my emergency bivy bag, fighting the wind to get inside. It was like climbing into a frozen coffin, cramped and dark. But it blocked the wind. Shivering uncontrollably, I focused on my breathing. Slow, steady. The darkness was absolute, the storm's scream muffled. I curled into a ball, fighting to stay awake. The first night had begun, and it would be a long one. Every minute was a battle against the cold and despair. I reminded myself, keep moving, keep thinking, keep fighting. The Arctic wanted me still, but I refused. I was alive, and that was enough for now. I listened to the storm, waiting for any sign of change. Survival was a moment-by-moment struggle. I was determined to see the dawn. Alone in the dark, the real enemy was in my head. Doubt whispered, "Give up, let the cold take you." But survival is a mental game first. I thought of my family, their faces, their smiles. That was my anchor. I made a silent vow. I would not give up. I gave myself a mission. Survive for them. Fear became focus. Despair became determination. The will to live is a choice you make over and over. I ran mental checklists: shelter, warmth, signal, food, water. I did isometric exercises inside the bivvy, burning calories but generating heat. Tiny victories kept the darkness at bay. I forced myself to stay awake, checking for frostbite every 30 minutes. Exhaustion pressed in, but I fought it. Survival isn't passive, it's relentless, active, moment by moment. I had to want it more than anything else. The hours crawled by, time meaningless in the storm. I clung to routine, to hope, to the promise I'd made. The Arctic tested my mind as much as my body. I was still in the fight. I would not let go. At last, the wind eased. The storm was breaking. I poked my head out. The snow was falling gently now. I'd survived the first night. Relief was overwhelming. The floe was larger than I'd thought. A fractured landscape of ice and snowdrifts. My kayak was gone, but I was alive. I walked the perimeter, stiff and cold, but moving meant life. The floe was part of a vast shifting pack. Dangerous, but maybe a way out. Then, half buried in a snowdrift, I saw it. My main expedition pack. Somehow, it had washed up on the same floe. A miracle. My odds of survival just skyrocketed. Hope surged through me. I had food, gear, and a fighting chance. The Arctic had thrown everything at me, but I was still standing. Now, I could plan my next move. I was no longer just surviving, I was fighting back. The ice floe was my prison, but also my platform for escape. I was ready for whatever came next. With my main pack recovered, everything changed. I had a snow shovel, food, a stove, a sleeping bag, and, most importantly, a tent. The bivy bag had saved me, but a tent was a fortress. I needed a real shelter before the wind returned. Using the shovel, I built a snow wall, packing it hard to create a windbreak. Behind the wall, the air was calm, a sanctuary. I cleared a flat spot and set up the tent, fingers numb but determined. Crawling inside, I zipped the door shut. Silence. The roar of the wind was gone, replaced by gentle flapping. I laid out my sleeping bag, feeling a sense of security for the first time. It wasn't warmth yet, but it was safety. I had built a home on the ice. Now I could focus on the next priority: water. Every step forward was a victory. The Arctic was still dangerous, but I was prepared. I was no longer just a victim of the storm. Inside the tent, I set up my stove, my lifeline. Melting snow for water was the first order of business. The first sip of warm water was incredible, thawing me from the inside. I took stock of my food: protein bars, dehydrated meals, soup. I ate hot soup, feeling strength return. But rations wouldn't last forever. I needed more. I searched the flow's edge for signs of life: seal holes, anything, nothing. But then, on a neighboring flow, I spotted Arctic char trapped in a shallow pool. Using a makeshift ice bridge, I crawled across, heart pounding. I caught 3 small fish, fresh protein, a gift from the wild. That night, I had soup and grilled fish, the best meal of my life. Every bite was hope. The Arctic provided, but only if you fought for it. I was learning to adapt, to hunt, to survive. The wild was harsh, but it wasn't empty. I was part of it now, fighting for every day. Survival was about more than endurance. It was about resourcefulness. I was determined to keep going. With food and shelter, complacency was the new danger. I was safe, but the ice pack was drifting. I could be moving further from rescue. Hope is not a strategy. I had to act. Signaling was next. I had a mirror and a flare gun, but only 3 flares. I waited for the right moment, conserving resources. I made a flag from my sleeping bag's red fabric and carved a giant X in the snow. My camp was now visible from the air, a long shot, but necessary. The silence after the storm was immense. The isolation, crushing. Routine kept me sane. Melting snow, checking gear, patrolling the flow. Doubt crept in, but I focused on the tangible, the warmth of my sleeping bag, the taste of fish, the feel of my ice axe. I was still here, still fighting. Survival was about winning every minute, not just waiting for rescue. The Arctic was vast, but I refused to be lost in it. Every action was a statement. I will not give up. I was determined to be found. The longest hours were a test of will. I was ready for whatever came next. On the 3rd morning, the clouds parted. Sunlight transformed the ice into a world of crystalline beauty. The sun meant I could finally use my signal mirror, flashing pulses of light toward the horizon. As I patrolled, I heard it, a low, mechanical hum. At first, I thought it was my imagination, but there it was again. A rhythmic, unnatural sound, an engine. My heart pounded. I scanned the horizon and saw a dark speck moving low on the water. It was an icebreaker, carving through the frozen maze. It was heading my way, but could easily pass by, never knowing I was here. This was my chance, maybe my only one. I grabbed the flare gun, hands shaking with adrenaline. I waited, watching the ship's slow progress, timing my shot. When it was close enough, I fired, a brilliant red flare arcing into the sky. The flare burned bright against the blue, a desperate signal. Please, see me. The ship seemed to continue on its course, my hope fading. But then it turned toward me. Relief surged through me. They'd seen the flare. The icebreaker plowed closer, unstoppable. I waved, frantic, as rescue drew near. The fight for survival was almost over. The flare fizzled out, silence returning. For a moment, I thought I'd failed, but the ship turned, heading straight for my flow. I yelled in relief, adrenaline flooding my body. Crew appeared on deck, waving. I waved back, packing my gear with shaking hands. The icebreaker stopped 100 meters away, lowering a small boat. 2 figures in orange suits motored toward me. When the boat touched the flow, a crewman extended a gloved hand. The fight was over. The tension drained away. "We saw your flare. Are you all right?" he asked. I nodded, emotion choking my words. I stepped into the boat, leaving my frozen island behind. I looked back one last time, grateful, exhausted, victorious. I had survived the Arctic's worst. With luck, skill, and will, I had won. The white wall was behind me. I was going home.